All right, so let's imagine a world. Okay. A world where AI is like calling the shots, diagnosing your illnesses, driving your car, even making like life or death decisions. Kind of scary, right? But then the question becomes, who is responsible when things go wrong? Like really wrong.
Yeah, it's a huge question. And honestly, it's one that's keeping a lot of people up at night.
That's what we're diving into today, this whole idea of AI accountability. And we're using this chapter. It's from a book called AI Made a Deadly Mistake, Who Goes to Jail?
Catchy title.
Right. Gets right to the point. So basically, we're going to try and untangle how our like traditional ideas about, responsibility, how those work with AI.
Yeah, because those ideas, they were built for humans,
Yeah.
right? With like feelings and all that. AI is a whole different ballgame.
Totally. So it's not like we can just, throw an algorithm in jail.
Exactly. So how do we even start to think about holding something accountable that doesn't, experience the world like we do?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, where do we even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to really unpack what we mean by responsibility in the human context.
Okay, so back to basics.
Yeah. Philosophers, legal scholars, they have been wrestling with this for centuries, but there's this one concept that keeps coming up: intentionality.
Intentionality. Okay, so it's not just about what you did, but why you did it.
Exactly. It's the difference between, accidentally bumping into someone or intentionally shoving them. Intent matters.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, that makes sense. But how do you apply that to AI? It's not like scheming, right?
Right. AI, at least as we know it now, doesn't really have intentions in the way we think about them. It's running algorithms, processing data, following instructions.
So can we really say that an AI intends to do something? Or is it just, doing what it's programmed to do, even if the outcome is bad?
That's the crux of the problem. It challenges our whole understanding of responsibility.
Okay, so let's get specific. Let's say we have an AI that's supposed to diagnose medical conditions, right? And it analyzes the patient's symptoms, recommends treatment, but then it makes a mistake, a big mistake. The patient gets hurt. Who's to blame in that situation?
Ooh, that's where the debate really gets heated. Some people argue we should treat AI like any other tool or product.
Okay, so if a car malfunctions and causes an accident, you go after the car manufacturer.
Right. So in your example, you target the company that developed the AI.
Makes sense on the surface, but I'm guessing it's not that simple.
You're catching on. The problem is AI systems, they're constantly learning, evolving, based on the data they get. So even if the developers had the best intentions,
the AI could still go off the rails.
potentially,
Yeah.
it could learn to behave in ways they never anticipated.
Okay, so maybe blaming the creators isn't always the answer. What other options are there?
Well, some people say we should focus on the humans who are using the AI.
So, the doctor who used the AI's diagnosis, even if they were just following the AI's advice?
Exactly. It shifts the focus from the AI itself to the human decisions surrounding it. But that raises a whole other set of questions, about how much control humans really have over these complex AI systems.
Right, because it's not like a simple tool anymore. It's making decisions. It feels like the more advanced AI gets, the harder it is to figure out where responsibility lies. We're trying to use old rules for something totally new, so where do we go from here?
That's the big question, right? Do we stretch our existing laws and ethical ideas to fit AI? Or do we need completely new concepts of responsibility? And if so, what would those even look like?
It's like we're stepping into some serious sci-fi territory here. Are we talking about, creating a whole new legal system just for AI?
Well, maybe not a complete overhaul, but there are definitely some out there ideas being tossed around. One that keeps popping up is this idea of electronic personhood.
Okay, electronic personhood. I've heard that term, but I'll be honest, I don't really get it. What does that even mean?
So basically the idea is that we could start giving some AI systems, legal rights and responsibilities, kind of like what we do with corporations.
Hold on, so you're saying we treat AI like an actual legal person, like it could be sued, own property, even vote?
Well, it's a whole range of ideas, right? Some are more moderate. They focus on holding AI accountable for harm, separate from its creators or users.
So a company being held responsible even if no single employee did anything wrong?
Exactly. And then there are some more extreme versions where AI would have broader rights. And that gets into some really, really deep philosophical waters.
I bet. But why even consider this electronic personhood thing? It seems like a huge jump.
Well, one argument is that it could actually make AI development safer, more ethical. Because if AI had legal responsibilities, then the companies making them would have a much stronger reason to make sure they act responsibly.
So it's like building accountability into the system from the start, rather than trying to figure it out after something bad happens.
Right. Aligns the incentives. If an AI can be held liable for its actions, developers are going to be way more careful about things like bias and algorithms,
Oh, yeah.
or those unintended consequences we talked about.
Okay, I see the logic there. But I can also see how this could create a whole bunch of new ethical and legal dilemmas. Like, what happens if an AI actually commits a crime? Who gets punished? Do we throw the AI in a digital jail?
Those are exactly the questions that everyone's trying to figure out right now. And it gets even trickier because AI systems are often so complex. Even the people who created them don't fully understand how they work.
So you're saying it can be really hard to pinpoint exactly how an AI reached a decision, which makes it almost impossible to assign blame.
Exactly. It's a tough nut to crack.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the legal and philosophical side of things, but what about as humans? I mean, what makes us feel responsible for our actions? It feels like there's something there that AI just doesn't have.
You're hitting on a really important point. One of the biggest challenges with AI accountability is that it's missing those core elements that drive human responsibility. Things like consciousness, emotions, and social pressure.
Okay, let's unpack that. Starting with consciousness. How does that tie into responsibility?
Well, consciousness lets us reflect on what we do, understand the consequences, and feel bad when we mess up. It gives us that inner voice, that moral compass.
It's like if I hurt someone, I can think back and understand why it was wrong and then try to make things right. But AI can't do that, right? It just follows its programming.
Exactly. It doesn't have that self-awareness. And that brings us to emotions. Emotions are a huge part of what makes us act ethically.
Like feeling guilty or ashamed if we do something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Those feelings make us less likely to do it again. But AI doesn't experience those kind of emotional consequences.
And then there's that social pressure, like wanting to fit in, be seen as a good person. That keeps a lot of us in line, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We care what other people think. AI doesn't really have that. It doesn't have a reputation to worry about.
So we're accountable not just to ourselves, but to our communities, right?
Right.
And AI just isn't connected to that in the same way.
Right. And that makes it really hard to hold AI accountable the way we hold each other accountable. So it's this big dilemma. AI is getting more powerful, but it lacks the things that make humans responsible.
So does that mean we're headed for a future where AI can just do whatever it wants with no consequences?
It's a valid concern, definitely. But it doesn't mean we're totally powerless. We can't make AI feel guilty, but we can design it with accountability in mind.
Okay, that's good to hear. What do you mean by designing for accountability? What would that look like?
One area that's showing promise is what's called explainable AI, or XAI. The goal is to make AI systems that can explain their decisions in a way that humans can understand.
So it's like being able to peek inside the AI's brain and see how it's thinking.
Exactly. Transparency is key for accountability. If we understand why an AI did something, we're much better equipped to spot problems.
That makes a lot of sense. The more transparency, the more accountability. What else is being done?
Another important area is building ethical constraints right into the code. Think of it like setting boundaries, preventing the AI from causing harm, even if it encounters a situation it wasn't specifically programmed for.
So no matter what the AI learns or how it changes, it's still bound by those ethical rules.
That's the hope. It's a way of making sure that even as AI becomes more independent, it's still operating within limits that we as humans set.
I like that idea. But even with all this, it seems like we'll always need humans keeping an eye on things, right?
Absolutely. Things like regulations, testing, maybe even licensing requirements for AI developers.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about holding the humans behind the AI accountable too.
You got it. It's not one or the other. We need a combination of smart design and responsible human oversight to make sure AI serves us. And that means talking about all this openly and honestly, as a society.
It feels like AI is changing everything so fast. But are we really ready for it? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it does feel like we're kind of playing catch-up, right? Trying to understand this powerful technology we've created.
Well, at least we are talking about having these conversations about, the ethics of AI and where it's all headed.
That's so important. We can't just treat AI as like another shiny new gadget. It has the potential to really transform our world in big ways.
For better or for worse, right? I mean, that's what we've been trying to grapple with today. How do we make sure AI is a force for good?
Exactly. And I think it's helpful to recap what we've covered. We started by talking about responsibility. and how that idea is so deeply connected to being human. Our consciousness, our emotions.
And how AI just doesn't have those same qualities.
Right. And that makes holding it accountable a completely different challenge.
We talked about some of those different approaches, like strict liability, and then there's that whole electronic personhood thing, which is still blowing my mind a little.
Yeah, that one's a real head scratcher.
Yeah.
But we also talked about some more practical solutions too, right? Like explainable AI and building ethical constraints into the code itself.
And of course, the importance of human oversight. We can't just let AI run wild.
Absolutely. And that's really the takeaway here, isn't it? There's no single answer, no easy fix. It's going to take a lot of different approaches working together, laws, guidelines, technology, and a whole lot of careful thought and discussion.
And maybe even rethinking some of our most basic assumptions about, what it means to be responsible in this new world where AI is everywhere.
Exactly. This deep dive has just scratched the surface, really. The book we've been discussing, AI Made a Deadly Mistake, goes into a lot more detail. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're interested in learning more.
Yes, definitely give it a read if you want to dive deeper. And I think that's a good note to end on. This whole AI thing, it's not going away. In fact, it's only going to get more complex and more important as time goes on.
Absolutely. So keep asking those tough questions. Stay informed. And never underestimate the power you have to shape the future of technology.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for being with us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious.